So let's start the remaining part of the previous lectures, that is the explain the structure of nuclear pore in eukaryotic nucleus. As in last lecture we have discussed about the nucleus structure. So in this nucleus is made up by the five different components. Which are those? That is nuclear envelope, nuclear pores, nucleoplasm, nucleolus, genetic material and chromatin. So last lecture I have discussed about the nuclear envelope, which is also called as nuclear membrane. So today we start the next one, that is the nuclear pore. So nuclear pore, mostly these are the minute pores which are present on the nuclear envelope. These pores are the dimensionally or having the diameter is about 600 to 1000 angstrom unit. The number of nuclear pores in the nuclear envelopes is not a definite. So these are changes according to the size. So mostly these are 200 to 300 per nucleus. In single nucleus these are about 200 to 300 pores are there. So this nuclear pore, it is a complex structure, and these pores having the electron dense material is present, and these are called as the annulus. So this annulus is a cylindrical non-membranous structure and it fits into the nuclear pore. So this annulus within the pore forms a nuclear pore complex. जो हम ऊपर से देखेंगे तो हमें only look like a pore, but it is not a pore. In that there is the cylindrical body is there, that known as the annulus, and in this annulus is made by the dense electron dense material. Due to this electron dense material, the transportations of the molecules will be takes place. So this annulus with the pore, they form the complex structure that is known as the nuclear pore complex. So see here in the picture, in the diagram, they at the two sides there is the membrane, that is, and in the between this membrane the nuclear pore complex is present. जो बीच में आपको इन्वर्टेड यू शेप नजर आ रहा है, that is the nuclear pore complex. So these complex, mostly these are made by the two types of cells, that is granules and filaments. In this granules again there is a four different parts, that is annular granules, cuff, third one is the peripheral granules, and fourth one is the central granules. जो आप फिगर में यहाँ पे देख सकते हो नंबरिंग किया हुआ है. सो दिस नंबरिंग इज द नंबरिंग के यहाँ पे नाम है. वन इज द एनुलर ग्रैनुअल्स, देन सेकंड इज द कफ, देन जो साइड में रहते हैं दैट इज द पेरिफेरल ग्रैनुअल्स, और जो सेंट्रल में प्रेजेंट है दैट इज द सेंट्रल ग्रैनुअल्स. इन द फिलामेंट्स, जो फिलामेंट ग्रैनुल मतलब जो सर्कुलर शेप बनाए हैं वो है ग्रैनुल्स, और जो फिलामेंट लाइक थ्रेड लाइक स्ट्रक्चर आपको नज़र आ रहा है दीज आर द फिलामेंट्स. सो इन फिलामेंट्स ऑल्सो देयर इज द aerial filaments, then equatorial filaments, and third one is the inner pore filaments. So in the structures of this uh, nuclear pore complex, the outer annulus and inner annulus consist the distinct subunits, that is also called as the annular granules. So these each annular granules is about 100 to the 215 angstrom unit. Then at the center pore, at the one sides of these annulus, there is the peripheral granules. Similarly, on the other sides of the peripheral granules, there is the cuff is present, and they will be supported to these granules. At the center of the pore, on either side, there is the central granule is present, and the space between the annular granules and peripheral granules is filled with the packing मटेरियल, जो आपको फर्स्ट फिगर में क्लियरली नज़र आएगा. देन the equatorial filament that runs between the central granular and nuclear membrane in the equatorial plane. So these also there is the axial filaments. These axial filaments are from the central granules, and these are extend beyond these pores margin. So at the central and periphery there is the granules. At the central there is the central granules. साइड में हमें यहाँ पे पेरिफेरल ग्रैन्यूल्स नज़र आएंगे, और ग्रैन्यूल्स को सपोर्ट करने के लिए यहाँ पे आपको फिलामेंट्स नज़र आएंगे. जो फिलामेंट्स हैं, दिस फिलामेंट्स आर अल्सो some inner pore filament and some are the equatorial filament. inner pore filament है जो कि ग्रैन्यूल्स है, ग्रैन्यूल्स के अंदर से पास हो जाएंगे, और जो इक्वेटोरियल फिलामेंट है, इक्वेटोरियल फिलामेंट जो कि ग्रैन्यूल्स को बैलेंस करने के लिए वहाँ पे रहते. सो these whole structures of the nuclear pore complex is made by the granules as well as in the filament, जो कि उसके पोजीशन के हिसाब से वहाँ पे आपको अलग अलग उसके नाम दिए हैं. तो नेक्स्ट वन इज द फंक्शंस ऑफ द न्यूक्लियर पोर. तो व्हाट इज द फंक्शन द न्यूक्लियर पोर? तो फर्स्ट वन इज द passage or check post. So at the time of exchanging of different macromolecules through these pore particles, only the size of the particle is very important. So those particles having the size not greater than the 115 angstrom unit, only those particles can be passed or transport through this nuclear pore. जिस पार्टिकल की साइज 150 एंगस्ट्रॉम यूनिट से ज़्यादा बड़ी नहीं है, वैसे ही पार्टिकल्स थ्रू दिस न्यूक्लियर पोर पास हो सकते हैं. उससे जो बड़े वाले रहेंगे वो पार्टिकल्स वो न्यूक्लियर पोर से पास नहीं हो पाएंगे. देन सेकेंड फंक्शन इज द सिलेक्टिव परमेबिलिटी. So selective permeability, that means the annulus with the nuclear pore function as a special device. The annulus contracts or expands according to the size of nuclear pore changes. So these changes as per physiological status of the cell or physiological active cells, this nuclear pore size is large and vice versa. So the size of this pore changes selections of the material, and it is selective permeability. So selective permeability, that is related to the size of the particle. So if the size particle it is small, then automatically the annulus will be contract, and then this particle will be pass. If the somewhat larger size of particle which want to transmit through this pore, so at that time these annulus will be expand. थोड़ा बड़ा हो जाएगा और उससे जो पार्टिकल्स है पार्टिकल्स ट्रांसफर हो जाएंगे और पास हो जाएंगे. दैट मीन्स these transportation of the particle, it is related to the size of annulus. When the small size particle is there, then automatically the annulus is contracted. If the size of particle is somewhat large, then this annulus size will be expanded, and through this contraction and expandation of this annulus, the selective permeability will be takes place. Then third function is the DNA synthesis. So some group of the scientists suggested that the process of DNA synthesis initiate in their regions of the nuclear pore. तो जो nuclear pore है, it is the initial site of the DNA synthesis. So DNA synthesis, that means formation of the DNA. So some scientists suggested that this nuclear pore, it is also a initial, or it is a point from that the DNA synthesis will be takes place. So in short, this is all about the nuclear pore. So for today's uh, lecture, I have only explained about this nuclear pore. The many time a lot of MCQs are asking on that aspect, nuclear pore. So here you can note that there is the small pore on the nuclear envelope, or which is also called as nuclear membrane, that is called as nuclear pore. Then this nuclear pore, uh, in that nuclear pore, it is a complex structure, and in that complex there is the electron dense material is present, and which is called as annulus. The structure of this nuclear pore is somewhat cylindrical and non-membranous structure. So here this annulus forms the nuclear pore complex, जो आप फिगर में देख सकते हो. एट द सेंटर आपको जो इन सेंटर देर इज द न्यूक्लियर पोर कॉम्प्लेक्स. दोनों साइड्स में यहाँ पे आपको मेम्ब्रेन नज़र आएगी. दोनों मेम्ब्रेन के बीच में जहाँ पे होल रहता है, एक्चुअली इट इज़ नॉट अ होल, इट इज़ अ कॉम्प्लेक्स फॉर्म ऑफ द एनुलस. तो यहाँ पे इन्वर्टेड यू शेप में आपको जो भी नज़र आए, दीज आर द न्यूक्लियर पोर complex. So this nuclear pore complex, it is made by mostly the granules and filaments. So here, according to the position, there is the at the center there is the annular granules, then there is the curve which are along the sides, then peripheral, that means at the जो साइड्स में पेरिफेरल ग्रैनुल्स वहाँ पे रहेंगे, और सेंट्रल में यहाँ पे आपको सेंट्रल ग्रैनुल्स नज़र आएंगे. और फॉर सपोर्टिंग दिस ग्रैनुल्स दिस फिलामेंट्स आर देयर, एरियल फिलामेंट्स, देन इक्वेटोरियल फिलामेंट्स एंड इनर पोर फिलामेंट्स. स्ट्रक्चर में आप पूरा यहाँ पे बता सकते हो कि इट इज़ ए nuclear pore complex, it is nothing but the annular granules complex. Size is key. Then and it is made up by the peripheral, central granules, curve are also there, and for supporting this the filaments are there, that is inner filament, inner pore filament, then equatorial filament and axial filament. The regarding the functions, there is the main function, that is it is a check post for according to the size of the particles, not size is not greater than 150 angstrom unit, only those particles are transferred to this checkpost. In this nuclear pore, it is carried out the selective permeability. If the particles are in small size, then they will be contracted. If the particles somewhat the larger size, then it will be expanded, and at that time the permeability or selective permeability or transportations of the particles will be takes place. Also, some scientists suggested that this nuclear pore, it is the site for the DNA synthesis. So this is all regarding the DNA, nuclear pore complex. In next lecture or next lecture, we have discussed about the fourth one important component in nucleus, that is the nucleoplasm. So this nucleoplasm, which is also called as the karyolimb. So in next we have discussed in details. So now I stopping the sharing.